Welcome, and let's embark on a journey to one of the most enduring and iconic civilizations in human history, ancient Egypt. When we picture Egypt, we imagine pyramids, pharaohs, and golden artifacts. But beneath this glittering surface lay a socio-economic machine of breathtaking complexity and efficiency, a true pioneer of the command administrative system. For nearly 3 millennia, the Egyptian state orchestrated virtually every aspect of economic life, from agriculture to craftsmanship, not through market forces, but through a centralized hierarchical bureaucracy that answered to a divine king. The foundation of this entire system was, unequivocally, the Nile River. Its predictable annual inundation was the lifeblood of Egypt, but it was the state's intervention that transformed this natural bounty into a sustained economic powerhouse. The river didn't just provide water, it provided a logistical framework. The consistent flow from south to north and the prevailing winds from north to south made transportation and communication remarkably efficient, allowing a central authority in Memphis or Thebes to project its power across hundreds of miles. This geographic gift made centralization not just possible, but profoundly logical. The philosophical and religious bedrock of this system was the concept of Ma'at, representing order, truth, and cosmic balance. Chaos, or Isfet, was the eternal enemy. The pharaoh was not merely a political ruler, he was the living embodiment of Ma'at, the divine intermediary responsible for maintaining this balance against the ever-present forces of disorder. This divine mandate provided the ideological justification for total economic control. All land, in principle, belonged to the pharaoh. He was the ultimate landlord, a god on earth managing his celestial estate. This theoretical claim to all property was the cornerstone of the command economy. In practice, land was held and managed by various entities, the state itself, the vast temple complexes, and high-ranking officials, but all were considered grants from the pharaoh, revocable at his will. This setup created a system where private enterprise, as we understand it, was virtually non-existent. There was no land market, there was only usufruct, the right to use land and its output in service to the state. The primary engine of this economy was agriculture, and the state's most monumental task was the management of this sector. The bureaucracy didn't just tax the harvest, it planned it. Central planners, based on records from previous years and reports on the Nile's inundation levels, decided what crops would be planted and where. The most crucial crop was grain, primarily barley and emmer wheat, which served as the de facto currency for payments in kind. To maximize yield, the state organized and directed massive labor projects far beyond the seasonal work of planting and harvesting. The most critical of these were irrigation works. While local communities managed small-scale channels, the state undertook large-scale canal digging and drainage projects to expand the arable land, the famous Black Land of Egypt. This required mobilizing and sustaining thousands of laborers, a feat of administration that would set the pattern for even grander projects. The entire agricultural cycle, from the retreat of the floodwaters to the sowing, maintenance, and final harvesting of the crops, was a state-directed operation. The peasant farmers, the vast majority of the population, were not free actors. They were subjects bound to the land and their trades, their labor and its fruits meticulously accounted for and appropriated by the pharaoh's administration. The efficiency of this extraction and redistribution system was entirely dependent on its most powerful tool, information. The Egyptian state was, above all else, a record-keeping state. This is where we meet the indispensable scribe, the human cog that made the bureaucratic machine run. Scribes were trained in special schools, learning the complex hieroglyphic and hieratic scripts and the mathematics necessary for accounting. Their work was revered, as captured in a famous text. Be a scribe. Your limbs will be sleek, your hands will grow soft. You will go forth in white clothes, honored, with courtiers saluting you. From the lowest scribe in a provincial granary to the highest official in the vizier's court, their task was to count, measure, and record everything. The most important of these administrative exercises was the annual census of the nation's wealth. Officials would fan out across the nomes, the administrative districts of Egypt, to assess the expected harvest, count livestock, and audit the workshops. This data was centralized and formed the basis for the entire economic plan for the coming year. The culmination of this data collection was the grand event known as the Shemu, or the harvest, which was simultaneously an economic and a religious ceremony. The grain was harvested by laborers and immediately transported to state-owned granaries, which functioned as the central banks of the Egyptian economy. These were not mere storage pits, but complex administrative centers with thick walls, raised floors, and a small army of scribes, overseers, and guards. Every bushel of grain was recorded on papyrus ledgers, noting its source, quantity, and quality. This centralized stockpile was the state's treasury. From these granaries, the state funded all its activities. It paid its soldiers, artisans, and officials with rations of grain, bread, and beer. It fed the laborers building the pyramids and temples. It provided seed grain for the next planting season. It served as a buffer against poor harvests, preventing famine and maintaining social stability. This system of redistribution, collecting all surplus and then reallocating it according to the state's priorities, is the hallmark of a command economy. The individual farmer or craftsman did not trade his surplus in a market. He delivered it to the state and received back a predetermined allotment for his subsistence and his work. This redistributive mechanism fueled the most iconic achievements of the Old and Middle Kingdoms, the construction of the pyramids and the great temples. These projects were not acts of mere megalomania. They were the ultimate expression of the state's economic power and its religious ideology. The pyramid complex at Giza, for instance, was not just a tomb. It was a massive, state-subsidized economic zone that employed thousands of people for decades. It required quarrymen, engineers, sailors, carpenters, and laborers, all of whom were paid from the state's granaries. The logistics of feeding, housing, and organizing this workforce were a bureaucratic achievement rivaling the architectural one. The state had to coordinate the shipment of stone from distant quarries, the production of tools, and the management of specialized work crews with telling names like vigorous crew or enduring crew. This demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of labor organization and project management, all directed from the center, all powered by the agricultural surplus that the administration had so efficiently extracted and stored. As the system matured, particularly in the New Kingdom, its complexity deepened. The temple estates evolved into massive, semi-autonomous economic conglomerates that rivaled the state itself. Temples like that of Amun at Karnak owned vast tracts of land, fleets of ships, herds of cattle, and workshops, producing everything from linen to perfumed oil. They employed their own armies of priests, administrators, farmers, and craftsmen. While nominally under the pharaoh's authority, they operated as powerful economic entities within the broader command structure, their own bureaucracies mirroring that of the royal court. This could sometimes create tension, as a powerful priesthood could challenge the pharaoh's authority, but generally it functioned as a delegated layer of the same centralized system. The management of these temple estates required an even more refined level of administration. We have evidence from Deir el-Medina, the village of the artisans who built the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings, that provides an incredibly detailed microcosm of this system. These highly skilled workers were state employees. They received monthly payments in the form of grain, fish, vegetables, and firewood, delivered from the state and temple granaries. Their work was meticulously tracked, with absences noted and reasons recorded, whether illness or a hangover from the previous day's festival. The records from Deir el-Medina also reveal a fascinating secondary economy that existed at the fringes of the state system. While the workers were paid in state rations, they occasionally used their skills for private commissions, creating tombs or artifacts for local officials. They also bartered among themselves. This indicates that while the command economy was all-encompassing, it did not completely extinguish individual initiative or local exchange. However, this private activity was small-scale, informal, and entirely dependent on the surplus and skills fostered by the state system itself. It was a ripple on the surface of a vast, state-controlled ocean. The other great economic driver of the New Kingdom was warfare and international trade. Pharaohs like Thutmose III conducted military campaigns in the Levant and Nubia, which were essentially large-scale resource extraction operations. They returned with immense booty: gold, copper, timber, slaves, and livestock, all of which was funneled directly into the state's treasury, further enriching the crown and the temples. Long-distance trade with Punt, the Aegean, and the Near East was also a state monopoly. These were not ventures of private merchants but state-sponsored expeditions, launched by the pharaoh and managed by high officials like the chancellor, who held the title overseer of the seal. The exotic goods obtained, incense, ebony, ivory, leopard skins, were used for royal display, temple rituals, and as diplomatic gifts, reinforcing the prestige and divine status of the pharaoh. The sheer longevity of the Egyptian system is a testament to its effectiveness. For thousands of years, it provided stability, security from famine, and the means to produce architectural and artistic marvels that still awe us today. However, its weaknesses were inherent in its structure. Its success was predicated on a strong, capable central authority. During periods of royal weakness, such as the First, Second, and Third Intermediate periods, the system fractured, the power of the central government waned, the bureaucracy broke down, and regional governors or high priests seized control of local resources. The meticulous record-keeping would cease, irrigation canals would silt up, and the grand redistribution system would grind to a halt, often leading to civil unrest, famine, and a collapse of public order. These dark ages in Egyptian history were direct consequences of the failure of the central administrative mechanism. Furthermore, the system was inherently conservative and resistant to technological innovation. Why develop a new tool or technique when the state demands the same output, using the same methods year after year? The economy was geared toward stability and surplus extraction for monumental projects, not toward dynamic growth or improvement in the standard of living for the average person. The peasant's life was one of hard labor and minimal consumption, his existence dedicated to feeding the machine of the state. The legacy of Egypt's command administrative system is profound. It served as a direct model for later empires, most notably the Hellenistic Ptolemaic kingdom that succeeded it. The Ptolemies, in fact, imposed an even more rigid and exploitative version of the pharaonic economic model, turning Egypt into their personal estate and creating a bureaucracy famous for its intrusive and meticulous control over every facet of life, from what crops farmers could grow to the taxes on every trade and profession. The Roman Empire later absorbed Egypt and, understanding its unique value, maintained it as a special imperial province, its grain shipments crucial for feeding the population of Rome. The patterns of administration, the use of corvée labor, the state monopolies on key commodities, and the concept of a divine or semi-divine ruler overseeing a planned economy are themes that would recur throughout history. When we study the command economies of the 20th century, we see a modern, industrialized echo of the same principles that governed the Nile Valley: state ownership of the means of production, central planning, the suppression of market forces, and the use of ideology to justify total control. In conclusion, the economy of ancient Egypt was not a primitive forerunner of modern systems. It was a highly sophisticated and successful adaptation to its environment and ideological framework. It was a system where the price of eternal monuments and cosmic order was the surrender of individual economic freedom. The pharaoh's administrators, with their papyrus scrolls and precision, managed to coordinate the labor of millions to build a civilization that lasted for 3 millennia. They demonstrated the immense power of centralization and planning, while also exposing its vulnerabilities, its dependence on a strong center, and its inherent rigidity. The pyramids, therefore, stand not only as tombs for kings, but as enduring monuments to the world's first, and one of its most enduring great command economies, a testament to what can be achieved when human effort is marshaled and directed by a single all-powerful will, for better and for worse. Thank you for your time and engagement with this deep dive into the economic machinery of ancient Egypt. If you found this lecture insightful, please support our channel by subscribing and leaving a like. It helps immensely in reaching others who are passionate about economic history. In our next lecture, we will travel to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia to explore the origins of written record-keeping with cuneiform and accounting, record-keeping in Sumer. We will see how the need to manage temple economies led to the invention of writing and laid the foundation for modern bureaucracy. Join us for that fascinating story.